On April 4, 1794, in the rolling fields of southern Poland, a battle unfolded that would etch itself into the national memory, not just because of its military significance, but because of its sheer audacity. It wasn't just trained soldiers or seasoned generals who shaped the outcome this time. It was ordinary peasants, armed not with muskets, but with farming scythes, who turned the tide. The Battle of Racławice wasn't merely a clash of armies. It was a bold statement that defiance, unity, and courage could challenge even the might of empires. The story begins with a nation on the brink of erasure. By the late 18th century, Poland was being carved up by its powerful neighbors Russia, Prussia, and Austria. The first partition in 1772 had already taken a significant bite out of the country. By 1793, after the second partition, Poland was a shadow of its former self. But the desire for independence burned hotter than ever. And nowhere was this flame brighter than in the heart of Tadeusz Kościuszko, a hero of both the American Revolutionary War and the Polish struggle for sovereignty. Returning from his time in America, Kościuszko carried with him revolutionary ideals and an unyielding determination to see his homeland free from foreign domination. In March 1794, Kościuszko proclaimed an uprising against Russian forces occupying Polish territory. He understood, however, that his resources were painfully limited. The Polish army had been weakened and scattered, its ranks thin compared to the vast forces of the Russian Empire. Yet Kościuszko believed victory didn't always depend on numbers. It depended on will, strategy, and the element of surprise. The Russian army underestimated the resolve of the Polish people, particularly the peasants, who for centuries had been relegated to the lowest social status. But in the uprising, Kościuszko saw them not as mere laborers, but as potential warriors. One of Kościuszko's most brilliant decisions was to enlist these peasants into the fight, equipping them with whatever they could find, and in many cases that meant scythes, modified and mounted upright on long poles. These farming tools became makeshift weapons capable of cutting through. More than just wheat, they could slash through enemy lines if wielded with enough courage. The scythe-wielding fighters became known as the Kosynierzy, and at Racławice they would prove just how formidable they could be. The battle took place near the village of Racławice, in the rolling hills and open fields of Lesser Poland. Russian forces, commanded by General Denisov, outnumbered Kościuszko's troops. The Russians possessed superior firepower, artillery, and cavalry. On paper, the outcome seemed obvious. But Kościuszko had a plan that relied on boldness rather than brute force. He placed his Kosynierzy in a position to launch a decisive assault against the Russian artillery, a dangerous gamble, as it meant charging straight into the heart of enemy fire. As dawn broke, the two armies clashed. The Russians opened with heavy cannon fire, their artillery tearing into the Polish lines. But instead of retreating, Kościuszko ordered the Kosynierzy forward. Leading them was Wojciech Bartosz Głowacki, a peasant whose courage would soon become legendary. With scythes glinting in the morning light, they sprinted toward the Russian cannons. The sight was so unexpected, peasants rushing with farming tools against the Empire's finest artillery, that it momentarily stunned the Russians. The charge was brutal. Many Kosynierzy fell before they reached their target, but those who survived crashed into the Russian positions with ferocity. Głowacki himself seized a burning cannon fuse and extinguished it with his hat, preventing the gun from firing at point-blank range into his comrades. This act of heroism allowed the Poles to capture the cannons and turn them against the enemy. In the chaos, the Russian lines wavered, their numerical advantage blunted by the shock of the peasant assault. Kościuszko seized the moment, ordering a full advance. The combination of professional soldiers and the unyielding Kosynierzy broke the Russian formation. By midday, the field of Racławice belonged to the Poles. It was a victory against the odds. And although not strategically decisive in the larger war, it electrified the Polish cause. The news of peasants armed with scythes defeating Russian forces spread like wildfire, igniting hope and swelling the ranks of the uprising. Kościuszko understood the symbolic power of Racławice. It wasn't just about defeating the Russians, it was about proving that the common people could rise up as defenders of the nation. To honor their contribution, he elevated several peasants to the status of free men, breaking the chains of serfdom for those who had fought. Wojciech Bartosz Głowacki became a national hero, celebrated in poems, songs, and later in monuments. His bravery stood as a testament to the idea that patriotism knew no social class. Of course, history reminds us that heroism alone cannot always secure victory. Despite the triumph at Racławice, the Kościuszko uprising ultimately faced overwhelming opposition. The Russian and Prussian forces regrouped, and by the end of the year, the uprising was crushed. In 1795, the Third Partition erased Poland from the map for over a century, but the spirit of Racławice never disappeared. It lived on as a powerful legend, inspiring future generations to fight for independence. Even today, the Battle of Racławice is remembered as one of the most iconic moments in Polish history. It's not just commemorated for its military tactics, but for the way it flipped the script. Ordinary villagers armed with tools meant for harvesting crops dealt a humiliating blow to one of the largest empires in the world. The scythe became more than a farming implement. It became a symbol of national defiance. In the end, Racławice was about more than just war. It was about identity, unity, and the belief that freedom is worth fighting for, even when the odds seem impossible. It's a reminder that history isn't always written by the strongest army, but sometimes by the most determined hearts. And sometimes, all it takes to make a lasting mark on history is the courage to stand your ground, even if all you have in your hands is a sharpened scythe. If stories like this spark your curiosity and you want to uncover more forgotten chapters of history full of daring moves, unlikely heroes, and moments that defied all expectations, make sure to hit that like button. Subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss our deep dives into the past.